If the head on your axe gets loose, throw it in a bucket of water. What's up guys, Dan here, Coalcracker Bushcraft. That is right, old timers would say that if the head of your axe is loose, just soak it in a bucket of water overnight and it will tighten up and you are going to be good to go. I think there's a better way though. I think the old timers were wrong when it comes to this. So the thought process of the old timers were to do that, it would make the wood absorb the water, it would swell up and tighten up the axe head, but that seems like a very short-term fix. But I understand from their position as I thought about it, they didn't have the internet or they didn't have a hardware store right next door to them that they can run to and grab a new handle if they messed the handle up. So by doing that, they were prolonging the life of their handle. They weren't having to carve or recarve as we're going to do here very shortly when I show you how we would, as modern woodsmen, actually fix that issue. They can just swell up the axe handle and they can start to prep for down the road to make a new axe handle, because again they had to make all this stuff themselves. So making an axe handle would require them to get a proper piece of wood, allow it time to season and dry, carve it down, and then rehaft the head. And they were using their axes almost every single day, be it on the frontier or a homestead deep out in the country. They had to rely on their tools, so they made do with what they have. We, on the other hand, don't have to rely on our axes every single day, and we have access to handles. So that changes the game a little bit for us. So the other part of the whole soaking in water thing that would sort of get voided for us is the fact that so many of us treat our handles when they're brand new with linseed oil. That linseed oil does the same thing. It absorbs into the wood and helps repel water away. So in this case, when I just soaked this here, although a little bit of water you can tell soaked into that wood, a lot of it was beating off and not getting deep down inside. So because of that, our old water bucket trick is not going to work too well for us. So what do we do? What do we do as modern woodsmen if the axe head is starting to get loose? Well, there's really just two steps. They're pretty simple, they're pretty easy, they require just a little bit of time, a little bit of thought, and you'll get the job done right away. First, we need to understand how the axe handle actually is held onto the head. First, you know that it is driven through the axe eye, and as it goes down onto the axe handle itself, it starts to compress some of this wood here and it tightens on. Secondly, there is a wooden wedge across the top, and that adds pressure side to side this direction to the axe head. So we have pressure holding it front to back and side to side. So if the head's loose, it's one of those things. So we're going to address both of them quickly and easily. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to drive the handle further onto the head. Now, before we do this, we want to look at right where the head and the handle meet, towards the bottom right here. What we're going to be looking for is, number one, is there any spacing between the metal and the wood? You're going to be able to tell how far down this axe head was seated, because you're going to see a very faint little line, maybe some little curls starting to form where the axe head was pressured onto that wood. You can tell on this handle itself, you could see some little curls starting to develop, such as right here. Now, if you see any of those curls down around this bottom section, what I want you to do is one of two things. You can take a knife, or if you have a small file with you, and you are going to remove some of that material, okay? The reason that we want to remove that is because when we reseat this handle, we want the handle to actually go a little bit deeper through the axe than it originally was. So if we keep those things in place, it's going to get caught in the same spot, and it loosened up for a reason, so we're going to just eliminate some of the reasons why it might have loosened up. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to just clean up any of those little curls all the way around, creating more room for that axe head to seat down a little bit further. You don't have to remove a lot of material here, just a little bit usually gets the job done. You can actually work all the way around the bottom of the axe head if you want to. Again, don't remove too much, just a little bit. We just need to tighten it up ever so much. Now, once that process is done, we are going to push the handle further through the axe head. Now, if you've never hafted an axe together, okay, it's a very simple process. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take, I have this big old axe pounding thing that we made, okay? You can see there's a flat side. My recommendation for you, grab a 2x4. You wanna use something flat though. We want flat on flat, not round on flat. That's when we're gonna split stuff out, all right, and chip it. We don't wanna do that. So flat on flat's gonna be important. Now, next we are going to pound on the top of this handle. You're thinking, well, where do I put this? You're not gonna put it anywhere. So I don't know the exact science behind it, but I can sort of just fumble my way through it. Basically, as we hit this handle with this piece of wood, I'm lightly holding it with my second hand, allowing it to slide downward. The force of me hitting this is going to force the wood downward, but because there's so much force and a heavier head, it is going to drive the handle through the head, because the head's going to move slower than the handle does every single hit. That's going to drive the head deeper onto the handle itself. So we're going to give it a couple good hits like this. So if you notice, I'm holding this nice and light. Just like that. And then right away I can go back and I can check at my axe. I can see that it is bitten further down into the wood, and so far we're doing good. Now that we seated our handle a little bit further down, we are going to check the wedge itself. Now, generally what's going to happen when you do that is you're going to see the wedge is going to be sticking up past the handle itself. And if you don't know what I mean by wedge, every axe handle, such as this one here, has a kerf cut into it. So once this is driven up inside the head, this kerf is opened up. You then take a wooden wedge and you drive it down into that kerf. That pushes the wood side to side like this, tightening it up even more. So when we pounded the handle and it drove up through the axe head, what that did was it moved everything upward, and normally that is going to loosen up the wedge ever so slightly. So first, check the wedge. If it's extremely loose and you can pull it out, I recommend pulling it totally out and making a brand new wedge, which we're going to talk about here in a second. If it is just up a little bit and you can feel, as I could feel, this one is up a little bit higher than the rest of the axe handle, and I know that was flush cut. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to pound that wedge back down inside. For this now, we do want to put the bottom of our axe on something solid, and I'm going to take my axe beater again, and I'm going to whack that wedge in a couple times. That is going to seat that wedge deeper again, making the axe even tighter onto the handle. Now, in all honesty, those two steps alone is generally going to tighten your axe back up, because that's how you put an axe head on an axe handle anyway. So we just went back and repeated those steps. But what if that wedge was very, very loose? Well, most likely at that point then, that means that your wedge, something happened there. Maybe it shrunk or cracked or something happened. So we remove that and we make a new one. So to do that, it's very simple. You just want to measure across the width of your axe. You're going to make the wedge that wide, and then you're going to make the wedge, whatever that kerf is, you're going to make it 2 to 3 times thicker than that kerf. And then the depth of it should be about the depth of the axe head itself. So if I was making one, I can't see how deep that kerf is in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, my axe itself is about 2 inches. So you see my fingers right here. So that's about how big my wedge would be. Remember, the wedge isn't going to fit all the way to the bottom of that kerf because it's going to get wider as it goes up. Pound a fresh one in and you should be good to go. So there you go, guys. That is how we tighten up an axe head on the handle if it becomes loose in the field. Simple, easy process, nothing overly complicated, just a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, and you will be good to go. So if you enjoyed this video, click the like and subscribe buttons below. You can also check us out over at coalcrackerbushcraft.com for our classes, our gear, and our blog. And yeah, until the next video, keep your axe head tight and stay in the woods.